again, everyone. We are the highest tier pod of your weekly unfiltered wrestling and entertainment. Welcome to the Worldly Podcast. And for the first time ever, over the years, I've done nostalgia episodes. We got a live stream where you can actually see our responses. Unfortunately, on audios, I would have clippings and video packages. You won't be able to see these on here due to copyright issues with YouTube and whatnot. So I'll be replacing those with images. But welcome. I'm your host, Marcus. Marcus Lee 337 on Twitter. Of course, your highest tier pod of weekly unfiltered wrestling and entertainment. Free and available wherever you get your podcasts. We're on YouTube as well. Follow the podcast on Twitter at Worldly Pod, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts on all audio platforms as well, from Spotify, Google Pod, Spreaker, iHeartRadio. Well, we're in for a good one because I've done a few WCW ones in the past. This might be the fourth one I've done from 1998, but we're doing WCW Fall Brawl War Games. I got CJ P, the EVP from Two Heads Podcast, back on here again. What's up?
What's going on? What's going on, guys? Glad to be back. This is important for me because this was back in my heyday. I actually graduated high school in 98, and this pay-per-view actually took place on my birthday in 1998. So NWO was one of my first big faction and wrestling. And so, yeah, I'm super excited about this and ready to get going.
So this might be the fourth WCW pay-per-view I did in 1998. And looking at the date, it did happen on your birthday.
It did.
Yeah, and this year it's on a Friday the 13th in 2024.
Yeah,
Jason 40
yeah, 44 Friday. I'll be 44 Friday. But yeah, September 13th, 1998, Fall Brawl. So yeah, it's definitely what's good, Dylan? Definitely a special day for me, and one of my favorite Fall Brawls too. So
I've said for years it was a favorite, but then when I look back and watch, I'm like, there was a lot of bad. It was voted the worst wrestling pay-per-view of 1998.
Oh, wow.
And believe it or not, this was the last time they did a War Games match on their Fall Brawl pay-per-view, because 99, they didn't even have anything. 2000, they did just a regular steel cage match with two guys. After this night, we didn't see a War Games match again in WCW until that horrific episode of Nitro where Vince Russo walked out still the world champion when they made it like they did the triple cage, like Ready to Rumble,
right?
Where you had to like capture the belt and escape the cage. Like it was so fucking weird. And the War Games rules for this one was weird too when we get to. But 1998, yeah, I was watching WCW Nitro and Thunder every week as a kid. I did not get the thumbs up yet watching WWF because Mom didn't like the profanity. She didn't like Austin flipping people off. She didn't like DX telling people to suck it, or people like Sable or Luna Fashawn or whoever, or Jacqueline flashing their tits in public. So I didn't get the full thumbs up until about 99, but I would sneakily watch this in my room when it was like past my bedtime.
To be honest with you, man, me and you were talking the other day after the live stream last week. Obviously, you know, Bash at the Beach was it 96 when Hogan,
joined NWO.
That was the formation of Hulk Hogan turning heel. That was like, for me, I was like a sophomore in high school. I was like pumping my fist. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe Hogan's going heel. And man, it just, NWO really just dominated professional wrestling for so long.
I didn't discover pro wrestling until like a year after all that happened. So when I started tuning in, the NWO was already a thing. It was one of the biggest thing in wrestling. The first time I saw Hogan on television, he was Hollywood Hogan. He looked like this biker asshole that gets his way all the time, and he always had that title. If it wasn't like on Goldberg or a Ric Flair or a Sting, it was mainly on Hogan. I saw him as a kid. And for 4 consecutive years, they did. WCW is kind of doing what AEW does today with a few shows. You had your certain shows like Fall Brawl for 4 consecutive years was Winston-Salem, North Carolina. So anybody from Wake Forest University, shout out to you guys. That's where they held it.
Shout out.
Bash at the Beach would be like in Florida mainly or California. They would always do Halloween Havoc in Vegas. Starrcade was always in DC. Road Wild was always at the Rally in Sturgis. So like they had their like own, like kind of like AEW, like All Out's always in Chicago. Double or Nothing's always in Vegas. You know, they have their like certain pay-per-views they go to in the same city. Did this for a short time, but
yeah, I think what was really special for me about this pay-per-view was, like you said, you know, they didn't do no war games for a long time after it, but the ramifications of the war games to where like it could actually end before, you know, all the participants got in, plus like the winner, like there would be one winner, and that person was going to get a shot at Halloween Havoc trying to break Goldberg's, what was it, 143-0 or 43-0, something like that. Just crazy.
Yeah, this War Games was like completely off as of any other year. Like instead of like 2 teams of 4, mainly it was 4-on-4. I think there were years they had 5-on-5. This year it was 3 teams of 3.
Yep.
But it was a twist. Whoever scored the pinfall got the win for their team, but would get a world title shot. Plus, it was every man for himself, so you could fight your own teammates, which was kind of stupid. But
I mean, you saw it. Like Rowdy Piper was going after everybody, man. He was just, yeah. It was. I really liked. I liked the concept of it, but like obviously, you know, once we get to it, you know, the people that started it. I mean, it could have ended right there, but we knew they were going to let everybody get in before there was actually a winner, because the match went for like 22 minutes. So yeah, it was. I love the ramifications of it. So.
Oh, and you could have scored a pinfall submission before all the guys were in there, and I'm like, that don't sound right. The War Games don't officially begin until all the participants are in the double cage or the 2 rings.
Right.
So
right.
It was completely off. Oh, and I wore the wrong shirt. I was supposed to wear my Wolfpack shirt, and I forgot. I got Manscaped on. So maybe next WCW pay-per-view I do in the future, I'm going to have to wear the Wolfpack shirt.
Yeah, I was looking for my NWO shirt, and I couldn't find it. So I was like, oh, I got like 5 minutes. I was like, I'm just going to throw my 2-head shirt on. But I had a Hollywood Hogan shirt I was going to put on, but couldn't find it.
I wanted to wear my Wolfpack shirt, but I forgot to wear it. So maybe next WCW Nostalgia I'll do in the future. I'll have it on. But yeah, 4th one I've done from 98. Did Uncensored, Bash at the Beach, Halloween Havoc, and now I'm doing Fall Brawl, which show kicked off, which before the first match, like it was your usual, like you get your weird shit video package, your weird shit pyro display. Then you'd hear like Tony Schiavone, Bobby Heenan, and Mike Tenay, the trio. And then every so often you'd get me and Gene Okerlund on the stage advertising something. If a wrestler don't interrupt him to get an interview, which that's how WCW was back then. They did all their they didn't do backstage interviews. They did interviews at the stage. And Jericho come out, which I completely forgot. He was the TV champion. I remember Bash at the Beach. He was the Cruiserweight champion, but he lost it to Rey Mysterio when he returned after being out for 6 months.
Yeah,
I had to go back and look. Chris Jericho won the TV title against Stevie Ray on an episode of Nitro, and he actually held it for 112 days.
Oh, wow.
Before losing it to Conan on Nitro.
Mm-hmm.
He comes out. What you got on Jericho?
No, I knew he was the television champion, but I wasn't aware he held it that long. That's definitely impressive. 112 days. Back then, it was way different. Like, I mean, Hogan was just one of those people that they all said he just didn't really ever like putting people over. But yeah, I think Jericho pretty much held every belt. So yeah, he was TV champion going into this PLE for sure.
But he was basically calling out Goldberg, saying Goldberg called him on his phone, said he wanted to face him in a match. And I'm like, well, Goldberg is the world champion. He's not on the card. And people are like, oh my God, we're going to get Goldberg and Jericho at Fall Brawl. Like, let's fucking go. Well, first the show kicked off, so we get the British Bulldog and Jim the Anvil Neidhart against the Dancing Fools, the Disco Inferno and Alex Wright, that I did not realize were baby faces. I only remember Disco as the babyface when he was with the Filthy Animals, but because Alex Wright was always a heel, especially when he was Berlin, and they didn't like Bulldog and they didn't like Anvil at that time, but it was so weird. And you said you had a nice little thing you wanted to say about the Dancing Fools.
Yeah, they kicked off the show like you said with Alex Wright, Disco Inferno. Obviously, one of the few times Disco Inferno was a face. I think they just set the mood, like back in '98, like they're just doing all these wild, crazy dance moves, and Alex Wright with his little dance skit that he had coming out there. But obviously, going into a match against two absolute icons that they ended up turning into Hall of Famers, and Jim the Anvil and Davey Boy Smith. The match for me, the match was really good. It went 11 minutes and like 36 seconds. And honestly, it was a good match for Alex and Disco as being faces. But at the end of the day, Davey Boy Smith ended up with the pinfall, pinning Disco Inferno, and they ended up taking the win.
Everybody in their life has once danced like Disco Inferno, especially at weddings. Like I used to do it when I was a kid. That's how I got every girl and every young lady's attention as a fucking horny 8-year-old, 9-year-old trying to impress girls and women. Or I do that Alex Riley dance. Yeah. Whatever the shit that is, that's something only in Germany, folks. But
Alex Wright, gotta love him.
But Bulldog won with his usual running power slam on Disco, got the win for his team. Like you said, it was a nice, slow, exciting way to start the match or start the event. So I couldn't complain too much. But and then we get Mean Gene backstage again. Supposedly he's got words with Scott Steiner about facing his brother later that night, but he reported that he was in. Well, first he comes out of a locker room with Buff Bagwell. Looking like one of the Backstreet Boys with them damn overalls and that top hat. I think he didn't look like Howie. I think he looked like Kevin more than Howie. But then Bubba Bub's just flexing his muscle with the Band-Aid on it. It's like, oh, I got you see that Band-Aid right there? Then he's got like an ice pack taped on his tailbone. He's like, I'm injured. I can't compete. And then Buff gives them this folded doctor's excuse that he made up with the worst doctor name you could think of. I should have wrote his name down, but it was so hard to pronounce. Saying it was the greatest doctor in North Carolina and the greatest doctor in the United States of America. I wonder if he went to Wake Forest.
Yeah, it's actually crazy because I was just thinking that when you were talking about it, I was like, all these notes I took on this PLE, and I did not write that damn doctor's name down. But he's coming out, flexing his muscles.
Like Skolgenheim or something like that.
Yeah.
Something Skolgenheim. Oh, and J.J. Dillon comes. Yeah. It's like I'm hurt. Like, oh, did you tear your butt? You wouldn't be wearing a Band-Aid if you tore your bicep or something. There, Freaksilla. And then J.J. Dillon coming, which I forgot how good he was, running WCW, calling the shots, if he was not Nick Aldis, but Adam Pearce. He kind of gave me Adam Pearce vibes. Yeah, it's my way or the highway. He sees that document, he tears it up, and he's like, "Oh, matter of fact, this match happens. I said at Road Wild, if you don't face your brother, then you're banned from WCW and you can never wrestle here again." And then Pump's walking pissed off in his Joe Boxers, forgot he had that ice pack taped on his lower back. So you see a big old bag of ice taped behind his back. And Buff just following him behind, strutting like he usually does. Buff Bagwell's, I hope he gets better. I've talked to him before. Hopefully he gets better.
Yeah, I think that I agree with you. I think J.J. Dillon, he reminds me a whole lot of Adam Pearce. But if you go back, if you look at the way wrestling is now and the landscape compared to how it was in '98, it's just completely different. But like them faking the doctor, AJ Dillon, he wasn't having any of it. He said, "You're gonna be facing your brother tonight. If you don't win, then you're out of here," basically. Which, I mean, can't ask for a better match between Scott Steiner and Rick Steiner. So I think that was a very interesting segment. That was in one of those periods with the NWO where, you know, it lasted. They were dominant for a while, and then they split into two factions. And I think Scott Steiner and Buff Bagwell were both part of Team Hollywood. So yeah, that was a great segment. I definitely enjoyed that.
Well, so now we get Chris Jericho and supposedly versus Goldberg for the WCW World Television Championship. First, I got to talk about Jericho first. He's mocking Goldberg. I don't remember what his theme song originally sounded like in WCW, because if you watch it on Peacock, they're playing his Break the Walls Down theme. Like if he had that, which he did. But what's funny was, like, and I used to hate when a song would play longer than 40 seconds and then they finally come out of Gorilla into the entranceway. I used to hate when they do that. Jericho, his song was going off for like 2 minutes, and then finally he's mocking Goldberg. He's doing Goldberg's traditional entrance where he's being escorted by security. So I wonder how much Jericho paid to get his own personal security.
God. That's awful.
The guy on the right looks like somebody I know down here. Look at these shirts. The Jericho-holic Ninja, Jericho Personal Secure. Like, for a second, the guy on the left looks like George the Animal Steel a little bit.
He does. I think that is absolutely hilarious. I mean, this is 98, man.
The guy on the right can pass as a Trump supporter today.
Oh, 1,000,000%. 1,000,000%.
He looked like he just came back from they were in Winston-Salem that night. He looked like he just came back from Charlotte Motor Speedway. Or came back from Talladega or something.
The greatest part about this for me personally, when I went back and replayed it, was he obviously walking around with these guys who he looked like he pulled from catering. But they got lost, like trying to get to the ring.
He ends up like in a cafeteria. Then he ended up in the exit, like outside the venue, and then he finally found his way. And I'm like, well, you wasted another 2 to 3 minutes for people to see you walk down, and then you had the snakes that sparkle pyro you probably took from a fireworks stand, and you're jumping from sparks, trying to portray Goldberg's entrance with the pyro. Well, then you hear Goldberg's theme. That's not Bill Goldberg. I don't know who the fuck this guy is. This is the only picture I could find of him. With the hardest nipples possible. That he had on one of them like foam belts. Like, I looked this dude up. Like, I can't find no info about this extra they impersonated. First off, it's not even Gilbert. That's what I thought was going to be the impersonator. That's just this other dude. Like,
yeah, I have no idea who that guy is.
He's obviously from parts unknown, because I don't know who the fuck this guy is. Never seen him, never heard of him, nothing.
But they did introduce him, if I'm not correct, if I am correct, when the match started. You know, the music hit, and I'm pretty sure they introduced him as Gilbert, but I don't think that definitely wasn't the real Gilbert. But man, it was just one big skit. Jericho trying to stir up Goldberg, trying to get him to come out, or I don't even know if he was there. Honestly, I never saw him. I
don't think he was there. No.
But it was. Go ahead.
If he would have been there, he'd have came out and like speared him and jackhammered him. So I don't think he was on Nitro. No. I think he was there the next night. Because I remember I saw like an extra video on YouTube, because I was trying to find a picture of this guy, and they showed the Nitro where Goldberg came out with that same guy on his shoulders, like he jumped him from behind or something. So,
yeah, it was. I mean, it was what was expected once you saw that it wasn't Goldberg and it was somebody they pulled out of the cafeteria probably. The match went for like a minute, 15 seconds. Chris Jericho wins with the Walls of Jericho. Starts taunting Goldberg again, so it was pretty short.
Yeah, it was a squash match. It was like a 2-minute match. I was like, no way in hell Bill Goldberg would have tapped out to the Walls of Jericho. It'd have been the opposite. It ended in 2 minutes with a spear and a jackhammer, like most of his matches were.
So, Dr. Abbey.
So we go backstage. Mike Tenay was interviewing the Armstrong brothers, who I think they were from the UK or something, before they got interrupted by, of all people, Ernest the Cat Miller, because Ernest is always walking around, I'm the greatest, with his karate moves and his dancing. How many times has this guy been in a feud with Norman Smiley?
Man, I don't know, but it was. I can't even say trilogy anymore on this podcast because I think they wrestled like 8 times at least. But
they had about as much matches as Rob Van Dam and Jerry Lynn.
Jesus, but yeah, it was. Ernest the Cat comes out there, interrupts the Armstrong brother, talking about he's a 3-time karate champion, and yeah, it was just.
Oh, Norman, I'm a count, turn my back. You got 5 seconds to get out of here, but Norman Smiley, him. I don't know. I've seen them both before when I went to my one of only 2 WCW shows. Like, I didn't realize Norman Smiley was from London. Like, maybe by that accent he got, but he looked like your typical traditional wrestler. He kind of gives me Rocky Johnson vibes. No knee pads. He's slick. He does slick Muhammad Ali shit, but he's got traditional look. Ernest the Cat Miller, it's like I'm trying to compare him to like 2 people. Like, I don't know.
He kind of reminds me of for me he kind of looks like Virgil. The guy
Virgil and D'Lo Brown. There you go.
Yeah. I was going to tell you, and I think it was 96 or 97. WCW came to Monroe, which Monroe, Louisiana, can only hold about 8,000 people. So the NWO,
Monroe Civic Center.
Yep, the NWO actually showed up. That was my first time to go to a live event. And Hollywood Hogan and the Giant was there. Ernest the Cat Miller actually wrestled. I think it might have been Scott Hall at that live event. But yeah, that was like, I felt like a kid at a candy store, man. Like hearing Hogan's music and the NWO's music, it was just, oh man, I was like 16 years old. So that's crazy looking back. It's been that long, man.
This must have been like after 96, because I remember one year Nitro went to Monroe, but it was the night after Slamboree. Slamboree was in Baton Rouge, and the next night they did Nitro in Monroe. But that was a month before NWO was a thing.
Yeah, this was, I mean, it had to have been after, I mean, NWO was there. So it was Hogan, Nash, I think, Hall, the Giant. I think Virgil was with them, I think. I can't remember everybody they had with them. You know, they had like 30 people in NWO. But it was a live event. But I don't remember, you know, if it was 97, it may have been 97 or something like that. I'm not really sure, but it was my first time to Hogan was my guy back then. I loved him. And so even when he was a face, he was my guy. And then when he went heel, I was like, oh man, like I'm going to start liking heel wrestlers now. Like he was the reason that I started getting behind heel wrestlers. So yeah, it was great to see him live.
Well, Ernest the Cat Miller, since he claimed he was a 3-time karate champion or 5-time?
3-time, yep.
So he won with a roundhouse kick, a spinning roundhouse kick, to get the win over Norman Smiley.
Yep, that match was
definitely wasn't the first.
Yeah, I think it went for about 5 minutes. It wasn't. It didn't overstay its welcome. I don't know. It was just a 5 minute match. It wasn't a complete squash match, but it didn't overstay its welcome either. So it was kind of what it was. But yeah, roundhouse kick.
Yeah. Well, then we get one of, well, it would have been an exciting match, but despite the outcome, but we get brother versus brother. We get Rick Steiner versus Scott Steiner, and how this built back up. Go back to Super Brawl '98. Scott turned on Rick. They were fighting. I think it was Hall and Nash, or it was Hall and somebody else from NWO. Scott Steiner turned on his brother, joined the NWO, got a new look, cut some of his hair, highlighted it blonde. I don't think he was that ripped up, but man, when I think of this version of Scott Steiner, I mean this is the top notch of Big Papa Pump. I don't get how this guy.
That's a lot of steroids, man. That guy is so jacked, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, right
there, his Fu Manchu.
The even the white thing that he has, like, it looks like he just looks like he comes from like the Egyptian times or something with the white thing like draped down. Like, I don't know, man. It's absolutely amazing. What he looked like back then. It's just crazy.
Yeah, because he didn't look that ripped up when he was teaming with Rick, coming out with the Michigan Letterman jackets and the wrestling headpiece. Then he wear that chain thing on his head, which is pretty badass. And then he faked with his brother one time. I think he faked an injury, and he was like, I'm ready to get back together. And then here come Brian Adams of the NWO beating him now with a baseball bat. They were supposed to have a match at Road Wild, but Steiner came out like in a wheelchair. I think he had like a fake cast on or something. And then that's when JJ Dillon like drew the line, like, if you don't face your brother, you'll never wrestle in WCW ever again. And he was doing everything he can. And even Buff Bagwell was getting involved. Buff just joined the NWO not long ago. And this was the first of a couple times you heard the NWO theme, because that's like one song you will definitely hear at a WCW show between 96 to 2000.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Iconic NWO theme. He comes out with Buff. Then Rick come out. They're going at, like, they're fighting like brothers, like they are, knowing each other. Then they fight in the crowd. And then one point, Buff Bagwell gets on the ring apron. He takes him out. But when he lands on the apron, now, if you've never watched Buff Bagwell's Dark Side of the Ring, Buff Bagwell at one point almost like got paralyzed at one point when he hurt his neck. I thought this was the show where he hurt his neck, but it wasn't. This was actually a false fake injury. We all were fooled. Even the officials and all that fooled. They waved the match off, ended in no contest. Even Rick was like freaking out. And I'm like, I'm rewatching this. And I'm like, was this where he broke his neck? And, they put him on a stretcher. The arena's like all quiet. They wheel him in the ambulance. And as soon as Scott got in the ambulance and they closed the door and Rick turned around, they both just jumped out and ambushed him. Buff's beating his ass with that neck brace around his neck. It was all a false injury to get out of a match, because damn it, if that match would have still continued, I think Rick had Scott's number.
Yeah, this was one of the matches advertised on the card that I thought was going to be, if not, I mean, it wasn't going to beat War Games, but it was going to be one of the top 3 or 4 matches on the card. Yeah, I mean, even me watching it back, I was like, was this when Buff actually really hurt his neck? Like, they fooled me again. Like, Rick's like over there looking like he's about to cry. Obviously follows them out to the ambulance. Scott acts like he's gonna get in. He tells Rick, I got it, back away. And then obviously Buff Bagwell jumps out and attacks Rick Steiner. The match only went for like 5.5 minutes. But yeah, we kind of got snooze out of a classic right there. But like you said, I think if it would have continued at that point, Rick Steiner would have sent Big Papa Pump packing.
Oh yeah. Well, then I like how after all this happens, they just continue on. We go to the next match. We get Juventud Guerrera versus Silver King for the WCW Cruiserweight Championship. There's no way Silver King filled in that cruiserweight slot. Like, he looked like he weighed like 240. There's no way he was fit for the cruiserweight title.
Yeah, I was watching that match and I was like, well, we know Juventud, like, he's obviously a cruiserweight, but like, who is this guy? Like, he should be fighting for like the U.S. title or something like that. Like he like you said, he was a solid 240 pounds. Great match though. For me it was. I think it went like 9 minutes or so. Juventud Guerrera, I think he beat him with the 450 splash. But yeah, it was a good match. I just can't really figure out who the hell Silver King was and what he was doing in the cruiserweight division.
Oh, Silver King was a legend in Mexico. He wrestled in CMLL, he wrestled in AAA, he also wrestled in New Japan, UWA. He was also Black Tiger. I never saw his face until I watched this match. I always remembered his iconic half black, half silver mask that he wrestled when in Japan as Silver King.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my first time seeing his face, and I'm like, for a second, I'm like, is that fucking Del Rio? Want to be Alvaro Del Rio's daddy or something? Because Mil Mascaras is his uncle, and I'm like, is Silver King his daddy? No, it wasn't his dad. Rest in peace, Silver King. He passed away 5 years ago from a heart attack. He was 51 when he passed.
Oh, wow, I did not know that. R.I.P. Silver King. I had no idea.
Hoovy, I'm surprised he's never had a massive migraine when he'd come out and he always bang his head with his hair flipping up and down like a little girl in a swimming pool trying to make an Instagram moment with the water. Like, well, what a match. Hoovy always works great matches with anybody, no matter if they're from Lucha Libre or any cruiser. You can put him with any cruiserweight in that division, he always would sell. But that's how Hoovy was. But when he went to WWE with the Mexicools, it didn't work out. But WCW, he had his craft.
I think that's something that WCW did better than what WWE did never. I don't think, from my knowledge, I don't think they ever experimented with it. I think the cruiserweight division was excellent in WCW. I think that's where you saw a lot of banger matches. Juventud, every time he was in a match, it was just, it was a banger. So yeah, I enjoyed the cruiserweight division in WCW. I wish it was kind of still a thing, but it's kind of it's a 1998 thing for us tonight. We'll never see that again, I'm sure.
Yeah, well then we go. Yeah, he retains his title after hitting a 450 splash. And I think they even paid respect after the match. They both shook hands after the match. So,
yep.
Well, this next match, I think this might have been the match of the night. These two, I've covered a pay-per-view where they had a kick-ass match like this. Perry Saturn versus Raven in a Raven's Rules match, because that was every time Raven had a match in WCW, it was Raven's Rules. This goes back to when the Flock was kind of going their ways with Saturn. He was back in the day, he was in the Flock with Raven, Lodi, Riggs, Sick Boy, Kidman. I don't know who else I'm missing. I'm trying to remember that category in WCW, NWO Revenge, because something about Raven, he was one of my favorite characters to play with in the video game, but they could have did more with him in WCW. He was a fucking star in ECW. He came to WCW. They kept him on that mid-card level. He held the U.S. title a few times. When he went to WWE, they made him chase after the Hardcore Championship, which he made relevant during that 24/7 rule. But it's like they could at least put like the Intercontinental title on him or something in WWE. But WCW, he should have been the world champion. He always had great story feuds. But this was like good. Like one night, he was in a cage match with somebody. Not a cage match. He was supposed to be in a match with Canyon, but something happened where the Flock attacked him. He was trying to go in a match with Canyon or something. Well, when they come out, I find out how J.J. Dillon and his security come out right behind Raven and Canyon. They handcuff Canyon to the turnbuckle. Saturn come out. They're going at it. Well, then Raven decided to enter the match. We're going to make it a no disqualification match because now the Flock's getting involved. They're grabbing tables and chairs. Well, then at one point in the match, Kidman turns on Raven. Attacks Raven because I guess Saturn was his friend. And then the Flock, like Reese, Lodi and Reese and all them are chasing him out of the arena. Well, at one point, Saturn hit the Death Valley Driver. I thought that was it. I used to love how he would sell it to Raven and Tony Schiavone and have an orgasm. Be kicked out. Well, Saturn accidentally super kicked the referee. He went to kick Raven. He super kicked the ref. He gets knocked out in the corner where Canyon's handcuffed. While that happens, Canyon managed to grab the key pickpocket the key out of his pocket, unhandcuffs himself, and starts attacking Saturn. Like, I think he grabbed like a flatliner, and he's hitting him with a flatliner.
Yep.
And then he handcuffs himself back to the turnbuckle to make him look like he wasn't getting involved. But Saturn kicked it out again. Then Lodi comes back in, and then Saturn hit the Death Valley Driver off the ring apron through a table on Lodi. But when he got back in the ring, Raven hit. I always called it the DDT. I didn't realize he named his finisher after a Pearl Jam song. He named it Even Flow. Which, by the way, I love Pearl Jam. Shout out to those guys. Hits a Even Flow, kicks out, and then immediately like that, he puts him back in a Death Valley Driver, and he wins the match. And I'm like, this was a fucking good match. This might have been match of the night.
For me, I agree with you. I think Raven was highly undervalued in WCW. I don't really want to do the comparison, but for me, if you watch back, he has a lot of those same tendencies and mannerisms as someone like Bray Wyatt. Just like the way he sat down in the corner and just things like that. This match was extremely good. When I watched it back, I was telling my girlfriend, I was like, well, there goes Billy Kidman, like running through the stands. I guess he's like trying to get to Tori Wilson somewhere because, him and Tori had a thing. I don't know if it was then or a little bit later on, but yeah, basically the rules was if Saturn won, the Flock would be released, and then obviously if Raven won, Saturn would be just kind of stuck with Raven and whatever he said. The match went for 14 minutes and like 55 seconds or something like that. For me, it was, besides the War Games match, it was the best match on the card. And I love the finish with Saturn hitting him again with the Death Valley Driver and sets himself free from Raven finally.
So next up, we get another. I would have said another. It could have been a better match, but the way it ended, we get Dean Malenko versus Kurt Hennig. Old Mr. Perfect. I think Kurt Hennig wasn't he? I don't think he was in the NWO already, or this was before he joined the NWO.
I think he was with the NWO because Ravishing Rick Rude accompanied.
Yeah, Rick Rude. Oh yeah. Yes, maybe he. Okay. All right. Well, go back to a night on Nitro. Dean Malenko had a cage match with Kurt Hennig, which back in those days, their cage matches had a roof on it, like kind of like what the War Games cage would look like, but it's like there was no escape, and you had to win by pinfall. Like, they even padlocked the cage. Well, somehow Rick Rude got involved. He managed to get in the cage. They're beating up Dean Malenko. I think even Stevie Ray got involved too.
Mm-hmm.
Stevie Ray was in the NWO.
Yep.
Just broke up with Booker T. Well, then out of nowhere, we come Arn Anderson, which, God, I don't know how old he was in 1998. I swear he was like 50 years old, but I think he was like in his late 30s.
Yeah.
Hell, in the 1980s, I thought he was 40, and he was only 27 years old in the 80s. I'm like,
Crazy.
That maturity was fucking different 40 years ago. When I was 27, I looked like I was 17 years old.
Mm-hmm.
You look 27 in the 80s, you look 20 years older.
Oh, yeah.
And the crowd just went, he had about a big pop LA Knight would get today. The crowd loved Arn Anderson back in the day.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Old Double A, or the Enforcer, whatever you called him. He was the most over guy of the Four Horsemen.
Yeah. I think this was right after Kurt, Mr. Perfect, Kurt, whatever, Kurt Hennig joined NWO. He was with Team Hogan. Ravishing Rick Rude brought him out there. The Iceman, Dean Malenko. Man, I wish the match would have lasted longer. Only about 7 minutes and 40 seconds or so. Two of the best technical wrestlers probably ever. They're both just phenomenal. I remember them showing a clip before the match where Arn comes out. I think he was to helping Dean as well. And he told Dean, like, I can't make this decision, but, if I could, he put the four fingers up like, I would put you in the Four Horsemen with us. Arn comes out there, Rick Rude interferes as well. And we kind of got shafted on what would have been an absolute classic match. But yeah, Dean Malenko secured the victory via DQ because of the Rick Rude interference.
And then Arn Anderson came in and assisted. I'm trying to think who was the Four Horsemen in around '98. You had Arn Anderson, Dean Malenko, Chris Benoit. Was the fourth guy Ric Flair?
It was.
Or
it
fifth?
was.
I feel like there was a fifth member. Was it Barry? No, Barry Windham was West Texas Rednecks.
No, it wasn't. I know it was Malenko, Anderson, Benoit. Yeah, it was Flair. It was definitely Flair. Might have to look that up though.
I mean, yeah, like I don't know. I'm looking that up right now.
I'm pretty sure it was Flair, Malenko, Benoit, and Anderson. Because they were always fighting with the NWO.
Well, I know the original Four Horsemen was Flair, Arn Anderson, Ole Anderson, Tully Blanchard, and you can throw in J.J. Dillon. But then when they had the final incarnation, they just mainly said Dean Malenko and Benoit with Arn Anderson and Ric Flair. So yeah, those were the four. Yeah, I thought I thought J.J. Dillon had a part of it, but no, he had nothing a part of it. So yeah, that was your Four Horsemen right there. Yeah, they still kept it four.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought another part that I forgot to mention earlier before the Raven match when they did that Conan interview. Scott Hall come out there and looked like he had been drinking tequila for about 2.5 hours. He just threw the drink. He just threw the drink in his face or something like that. But yeah, that was like right before the Raven Saturn match. That was something I had notated because it was just Scott Hall he was just funny, man. Everything the way he talked and the way he could get the crowd behind him. Like he besides Hogan, he was definitely my favorite NWO guy.
Then you had co-main event. You had Conan versus Scott Hall. So you had an NWO Wolfpack member versus NWO Hollywood member, which when it comes to Conan matches, I didn't remember this one. The only one I'll always remember was his match with Disco at Bash at the Beach '98.
Mm-hmm.
That was 2 minutes, and Kevin Nash in FUBU gear fucking punted Disco in the face and powerbombed him and got the win for Conan. But I liked Conan in Wolfpack. Like I think
Mm-hmm.
Sting. I think it was either Kevin Nash was my guy in Wolfpack or Sting. But I have to give Conan some love too. Like when you think of the Wolfpack, you think of Sting or Nash or Macho Man or Lex Luger. You don't really
Mm-hmm.
talk about Conan a lot. But I loved Conan. He was like that guy, like kind of reminds you of Carlito in the Judgment Day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
He
he
could have been
comes
in the
out.
LWO, but he wanted to be in
Yeah,
the Wolfpack.
yeah. He come out there with all the little signs he did with his hands and speaking. You know whatever the heck he was saying when he come down to the ring, but he had the little bandana and just he was definitely Wolfpack material. But this match was great. I thought it
Vincent
was.
kept getting involved, or Virgil, whatever you want to call him.
Yeah,
Vincent.
Scott Hall came out there with Vincent, and Scott Hall was like taking like little 30-second breaks to get his little shot of tequila or whatever he was drinking. I mean, the match went for 12 minutes, so like it was quite a long match. But Scott Hall just wanted to drink more than he wanted to wrestle that night, and ultimately Conan took advantage after about
Yeah.
12 minutes and beat him with the tequila sun. He beat him with what he was drinking on the tequila
That's
sunrise.
I knew it was called something with alcohol. His little face buster, like
Mhm.
X-Pac called it the X Factor. He called it the Tequila Sunrise, and then he put him in. It looked like a scorpion deathlock, and he tapped out, or it looked something like not like a sharpshooter. It looked something like a scorpion deathlock. Scott Hall immediately tapped out. I was like, oh, Conan got 2 single wins in 1998 that I remember.
Yeah, that was a big win for him.
Yeah. Especially how big Scott Hall was in WWE when he was Razor Ramon, or who was the Diamond Stud? It was him, or was it Kevin Nash? I think it was him, Scott Hall. Scott Hall's the Diamond Stud.
I think so. I think he was a Diamond Stud. And the thing about Hall was, when the NWO first formulated, he was the first one to come out and mess with Eric Bischoff and Heenan and all them at the announce table. And then he said he's got a big man coming, and then there was Nash. Scott Hall just what he could do when on the mic with the fans. Just it was he was the best, one of the best. Definitely R.I.P. Scott Hall. That's he was great.
Remember whenever I don't remember if it was on Who Killed WCW or it was on one of those documentaries when they were talking about creating the NWO. Remember Eric Bischoff wanted Sting to be the third man, and then Hogan was like, "No, let me do it. I want we won't need to do something that's never been done in the world of wrestling. Me being a bad guy," and then they kind of changed the script.
Yeah. Well, that actually was on there. It was. So what happened was about 2 days before Bash at the Beach, Sting was supposed to return and become part of the NWO. So Kevin Sullivan kind of stepped in, reached out to Hogan. It's like, what do you think about becoming a heel? Hogan's like, I don't know, I don't know how the fans are going to react. But ultimately, Kevin Sullivan, created greatness whenever he decided to make that move. And it was ultimately supposed to be Sting, but it was a very last minute, last day decision for Hogan to be the third guy. And the rest is history, man. Besides NWO and Bloodline, 1 and 2, greatest factions ever for me.
Yeah. Well, then we get to the main event, which before I used to love when they would bring in Michael Buffer to do the introductions for the main event. Like, it's classic. Are you ready? Or let's get ready to rumble. Like, you gotta love it.
He's like, ladies and gentlemen.
Are you ready? Yeah. Even you think it's a boxing event because he'll be like coming down to the aisle wearing black and white, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Or they do give you like Hollywood Hogan, like
Yeah,
he
his
get that low. The EVP CJ P, like it'd be
yeah,
say shit like that.
Michael Buffer was just absolute legend, man. That guy, like, wasn't he like? Didn't he do like boxing matches too? Like,
Yeah,
I,
he did boxing. That's how he got famous. He was a boxing announcer, and then
mm-hmm.
WCW brought him in for the main events. But who you like better, him or his brother Bruce?
I have to go with Michael, man. Like, just the way everything he said, like when he did let's get ready to rumble, like he enunciated every single letter and every word. It was just fantastic. The guy was, I don't know if there will never be another one.
But they both got like their own flames. Like Michael Buffer will be like, "No, are you ready?"
Mm-hmm.
Bruce Buffer be like, "We are live." Michael Buffer, let's get ready to rumble. Bruce Buffer, it's time. Like they got their own catchphrases.
Mm-hmm.
They were made to do that. So,
Mm-hmm.
so we get this War Games match with a twist where it's 3 teams of 3. You got Team WCW, which consists of Diamond Dallas Page, Roddy Piper, and the Warrior, not Ultimate Warrior. Team NWO Hollywood of Hollywood Hogan, Bret Hart, and Stevie Ray, and Team NWO Wolfpack of Sting, Kevin Nash, and Lex Luger.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I thought maybe someone from each team should have started. It should have been 3 guys from each team, a guy from each team, but no, they did with 2. It started with DDP and Bret Hart, but it was like the same. Like they wrestled 5 minutes, and then they had the random drawing, which I think NWO Hollywood won the drawing, so because Stevie Ray came out first,
Yep.
and then it was every 2 minutes, which them
Mm-hmm.
2 minutes went by fast. Like I thought WWE, it's the same concept. Match starts 5 minutes, and then when someone come in with the random drawing with the advantage, then it's every 2 minutes. I thought it was 3 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they're all in, then a fall could count. You just beat the hell out of each other till all the participants were in. But before, I want to get your take on when it comes to War Games. So this is what WCW played with also when it was also under Jim Crockett Promotions. This was your War Games setup. Now, this is the best picture possible I could find. It's got a roof. The cage goes to the apron. But I'd like to know how tall the roof is from the canvas because I think I've seen people get back body dropped and their feet would hit the ceiling. Like it's
Yeah.
not very high.
Yeah. It doesn't look. I mean, I don't know, man. Maybe I don't know. I don't even want maybe 8, 10 feet. It doesn't. It. I don't know. It doesn't look very. It definitely doesn't look very tall once you bring that up. But I don't. Yeah, it's very odd because I have seen that before as well. I'd say what maybe 10 feet. I mean, it could be more, I guess, but I don't know. It doesn't look very tall to me.
This is what we have today these days. WWE just went with like just a simple cage with an open where
Mm-hmm.
you can use it in your advantage to like jump off the top. But the rules of War Games is you're supposed to keep your opponents in the cage. If you ever get out, it's automatic forfeit for your team.
Mm-hmm.
But I take it you rather this version than what they had in the past with a roof.
Um, it's tough to say, I guess, because of I do like this new version, um, but the older version, like I think you could do more damage because like you could just kind of stick somebody's head, like try to. I don't know. I don't know. It's kind of a toss up. I like both of them, but like you said, the other one, like their feet would hit off the top of it, so it just wasn't. If it would have been like maybe 14 to 16 foot tall, a little taller, that would have been the perfect setup. I think because it wasn't that wasn't so tall, that would I would go with the newer model. But they're both great.
Well, I'm gonna pop it back up. One thing that the old cage never had, you see in the dead center, they had that like steel grated panel that like as like a walking platform. Where in the old one you didn't have that, your foot could get caught in between the two cameras.
Oh my
the
God,
two rings.
yeah. I see that. That's crazy. Yeah, I never even noticed that. That's
Hey,
crazy.
you remember Scott Hall went in between the two rings with this match with Conan.
Mm-hmm.
He went under that ring, which that explained like something that happened in that match we'll get to. But yeah, Stevie Ray was the first to come out when it was 3 guys. So NWO Hollywood, of course, had the advantage.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, they had the advantage. Well, then next, Sting entered from Wolfpack. Then 2 minutes go by. Roddy Piper comes in for Team WCW. Then Lex Luger comes in for Wolfpack. Then Kevin Nash comes in for Wolfpack. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, Hogan's going to be the last one in. Well, technically not. Before the clock even ran out, Hogan came out to the ring like 90 seconds before he was supposed to come out. And he came out with some kind of weapon. I mean, was it a guy? What was that shit Brian Adams? No, what was that shit Canyon had? Like a flapjack. He was hitting him with a flapjack.
Yep. He had a flapjack.
And then at one point, the ring started smoking up. And then next thing you know, Warrior's doing what Hogan did. But turns out that wasn't really Warrior. That was just a jobber imitating Warrior. Because all the smoke came back out again. And then he just disappeared. And then when the clock strikes 0, here comes the actual Warrior sprinting to the ring. And WCW trying to pretend like it's WrestleMania 6. They're trying to rebuild this Hogan Warrior feud, which it led to probably one of the worst matches I ever saw on WCW when I watched Halloween Havoc 98. But I think what was funny, I didn't get an image of it. I wanted the video clip of it, but I didn't want to get in trouble. Hogan left the cage. You're supposed to keep your guys locked in, but then again, they were acting like AEW. Oh, anything goes. They can get out. Hogan gets out the cage. He was with somebody walked out with him. Was it? Oh, it was Disciple. It was old Brutus Beefcake. It was Disciple.
Yeah.
He's carrying him out. Next thing you know, Warrior's climbing the cage. He like kicks the cage wall. After the second kick, the cage completely rips open. I think what was funny was when he went to get out, he literally fucking fell out the cage and landed on his ass. And it was funny as hell. And he got up like nothing happened. And then he chased him back to Gorilla. And I'm like, I laughed so hard. He looked like an envelope that went in a mailbox at the post office. The drop box. Like it looked like a fucking envelope in the drop box. And I'm like, oh shit. I laughed hysterically. And then in my peripheral, I see DDP hit the diamond cutter on Stevie Ray and got the win for his team. But he had all the credit because he got the title shot against Goldberg at Halloween Havoc, which this was a big win for him because he started the match. He was in it the longest with Bret Hart, and the crowd went crazy, and we're like, oh, he's finally getting his shot, which led to a good match that got cut off the pay-per-view camera. But it was a great match for him. I didn't think it was the best War Games match ever, but I said I enjoyed it. But the show alone had some of its problems, but it is what it is. But I think Saturn and Raven tore the show up. That was the match of the night.
Yeah, I agree. I think Saturn and Raven was the best match. This War Games match, like I said at the beginning of the show, like just a stipulation of somebody being able to face Goldberg at Havoc. Like you said, normally you're going to have a participant. You know, we would have had one from Team WCW, one from Team NWO Hollywood, and one from Wolfpack, but they didn't do it that way. The match was about 20 minutes, a little over, not much over. DDP and Bret Hart, which we saw on Monday Night Raw. They started it out. I was a little disappointed, I guess. I mean, DDP was so over at that point with the bang or whatever he did. But the way the Hogan situation played out, because for me, like growing up as a kid and not like WrestleMania 6, I was a kid. I could finally say I was a kid then. That was like one of those moments where like Hogan and the Warrior, you know, like for me, one of the best matches that I've ever seen as a Hogan fan until he lost. That was like, I think one of the few times I ever shed a tear over a wrestling match because I just, at that age, I couldn't understand, why they put the Warrior over him. But the match at Halloween Havoc, later on in '98 after Fall Brawl was just absolutely terrible. I think Hollywood Hogan did actually get that win there, but DDP got the win with the diamond cutter over Stevie Ray and earned the title shot. If I would have had to call Vegas and make a bet on who was going to win this match, DDP probably wouldn't have. I know he wouldn't have been in my top 3 or 4. I would have went with like Sting. I don't really like the way they did the Hogan Warrior thing where they just eliminated themselves out of the whole equation. At that point, I was kind of pulling for Sting or maybe Luger or Nash. Roddy Piper's just nuts. He's going to beat everybody up. He was fighting his own guys. But yeah, DDP got that big opportunity and he scored that pinfall over Stevie Ray. He started the match and he almost beat Bret Hart. Bret Hart almost beat DDP before we even got going. It was about a 2 3/4 at the very beginning. But yeah, DDP wins War Games and goes on to Halloween Havoc. So the pay-per-view was for me going back and watching it again. I still enjoyed it because I love the NWO, but it definitely had its flaws for sure. But I agree 100%, Marcus. I think I would go the Raven Saturn match, and then probably War Games, and then obviously probably the Cruiserweight. My top 3. Scott Hall too, probably in there with it.
I think we can both agree the worst match had to go to the Steiner brothers. The way with Buff faking that injury and waving the match off.
Absolutely. I guess, but Buff was like, for me, like I said, I'm watching this back and I'm like, I remembered, what you were talking about. Buff really did hurt his neck, and I'm like, well, did it really happen? Did it happen here? Because I mean, they got me again. Like he sold it so well, and so did Big Papa Pump. So yeah, I mean, it's still the most disappointing match for sure. I felt like that would have been the absolute banger, and it went like 7-8 minutes. So yeah, definitely the most disappointing for sure.
Well, that will do it for tonight. This was fun. I'm gonna try and have this episode available on all audio platforms this weekend, but if you don't want to wait till then, you can watch this live stream anytime on demand on YouTube or Facebook. This was nice to see. Like now we got people tuning in the comments instead of having a picture or vision or our thoughts and audio and everything. But this was good. I'm gonna do another one next week. God, I got carried away there, but no, I got another one coming on next week. I'm gonna do another live nostalgia. Be sure to check it out. But real quick, let them know where they can find you on social media and your show Two Heads podcast.
Thanks again for bringing me on. Definitely check the show out next week. But you can find me on Twitter at Charlie718-03496. I'm the EVP CJ P. You can also find me. I am one half of the IWC Promo Battle Tag Team Champions on Two Heads Podcast on Friday on Twitter Spaces at 6 p.m. And I'm one of the hosts of Main Event Mondays on Monday night at 5:30 p.m. Eastern, also on Twitter. Or you can find me on Instagram or Facebook as CJ Perry. But yeah, it's always great to come back and on this show with you guys, and doing a show like this, especially with it being on my birthday and the year I graduated high school, it was kind of like a cherry on top. But yeah, I definitely enjoyed it, man.
Oh, yeah. Well, that will do it. Thank you again for joining us. We'll catch you down the road. And for everyone tuning in, I will see you guys next week for another nostalgia. Y'all take it easy.